Paul.
Hey, Fab.
How are you?
Good, you.
Cool. Today we'll talk about something extra controversial.
Between Fab and I.
For me, controversial at 9 a.m. Eastern on a Friday morning.
I love
To
it.
holidays. Maybe it wouldn't be so controversial in the afternoon. We'll see where it goes.
Depends how many coffees we've had, right, Fab?
Yeah, I clearly haven't had enough. You want to talk about communication style, in sales, and obviously that's a big topic, right? There's a lot of elements in a communication style. Two of them that I think you wanted to touch on were body language and conversational style, so how we communicate and talk to others. So body being more the physical, how I look, et cetera, et cetera, or how not how I look like physically, but more how I hold myself physically, and conversation style. And I'm fully aware that there are probably better terms out there. Is more how you're carrying the conversation with your prospect, but your customers as well. If you're an account manager and so on and so forth. I think that's it. I don't know where you want to start with that.
Yeah, well,
What triggered this, I guess, for you?
it's funny. What triggered this is I was listening to a podcast and they were talking about this. It's been roaming in my head for a while, but I was listening to a podcast and they were talking about this trainer called Freddie Roach, who used to study other boxers, literally body language and ticks when he was boxing, and he would act like that other boxer when he was training his boxers, and this would improve his win rate tremendously because human beings actually give little cues when they're talking to you, and you know the typical ones. If someone's doing eye contact, if someone's interrupting, if someone speaks very quickly, they're excited. We can all tell when someone's bored, kind of like Fab is right now.
It's just the lack of caffeine. It's very different.
I know. And I want to say something. I want to be careful that we don't fall into sort of like the tacky stigma stuff. Like if you cross your arms, it means you're closed-minded. I cross my arms all the time because I just find it more comfortable, and it certainly doesn't mean that I'm not engaged. So
Yeah.
But if someone crosses their arms and they sit back and they stop talking, well, then maybe they are giving you a message, right?
Yeah, and I agree with you. Like to me, when you kind of introduce this topic offline, that's the first place my mind goes to, because I've heard so many of those, right? And not just in sales. Like back in the day when I was working full time and preparing for interviews, there was always like these things, like if you're cross armed, if you're this, if you're that, and while how you are is important, right? First impressions matter. I think a lot of studies have demonstrated that. I just don't think they're the place where I would focus most of my attention when it comes to sales, right? So the how you dress, or crossing your arms, or standing up on cold calls, even though the person can't see you, like stuff like that. I'm like, sure. I mean, everything adds like a percent here or a percent there. Well, a percent close rate is a big deal, but like, let's say a 1/4% here or a 1/4% there. But it's probably not where I would put in all my effort, right? If training my reps on standing up when they're making phone calls is probably not the biggest priority that my biggest priority as a sales leader, right? I would probably focus a lot more on the training and what am I going to say and how to be in those split second conversations and stuff like that, as opposed to make sure you're standing up. Like
I hear what you're saying, and I don't entirely disagree, but I disagree a little bit, and I'll tell you why. What you're saying is obviously important. Knowing if you're doing a demo, knowing your pitch is important. We've talked about this. We've been doing 3 years of podcasts, and it's the first time we touched the subject. So obviously, even you and I put a lot more importance in a lot of other substance, like asking good questions. Knowing how to listen, knowing how to follow through your sales process. I agree with all of that. But what I think, one thing that I do like about standing up. So if you come in and you have to do cold calls in the morning, you're really not motivated. Standing up will have an effect on you. It's not so much what the person will hear, but standing up makes your heart pump a little harder. It gives you a little bit more energy. So it might get you going more. Maybe the person on the other end of the phone won't hear it, but it'll have a good effect on you to saying, okay, I'm ready for this thing because I'm standing up. So that's where I believe standing up can help.
Yeah, I
And
just think that we live in a world now where we realize that people are quite different, and reps
yes,
that like standing up and walking around do it like they don't need to be taught how to do that. And there's some reps that are,
that's true.
I don't want to put a label on it, but let's call it more analytic. They love being around their CRM, and it comforts
Yeah.
them to have like all the information when they're doing their
But
cold
that
calls. They're like,
energizes them. All we're saying is
right,
that you need to find what energizes you. So if standing up
yeah,
energizes you, do it. If being in front of your CRM energizes you, do it. All we're saying is find the thing that energizes. Like if you
yeah,
like guitars, turn and face your guitar when you're doing your cold call.
yeah,
Find something that lights you up. So yes,
yeah,
yes.
yeah.
I think I interrupted you there.
No, but we both interrupted each other, so it's all good. So let's try to segment it again because it's a big topic and there's a lot of things in the
Before we move
communication
on,
style.
sorry, I'm
Yeah,
interrupting you because before we move on, I just want to address the other thing you talked about quickly is the way you dress. Again, the way you dress is how it makes you feel. So
yeah,
if you're going to a pitch or you're going to meet someone and that favorite T-shirt of yours with with whatever sports team is on it, and you're pitching in an environment where that's acceptable and it makes you feel good, man, wear that T-shirt. If
yeah.
wearing a suit and tie gives you confidence, wear a suit and tie. Okay, yes, you're right. Let's structure this.
Yeah, I guess my challenge with a lot of these advice that you hear online and here and there is that it's very one size fits all, right? Like the way you dress impacts, and yeah, you're right. Like, and there are scenarios, right? Again, uh, like studies, social psych studies that say like people trust people that wear how do you call those? What doctors wear, like those white
Oh, lab coats.
jackets.
Lab
Yeah,
coats.
lab coats, right? Like, so obviously the way you dress does have an impact. But I agree with you. It's ultimately a matter of. I mean, there's two things. It's you need to be comfortable, but there's a reality you live in, right? If you're selling to law firms, you've maybe more of a acceptance in wearing a suit than if you're selling to a startup environment where the average person shows up in a hoodie and sandals, and you're showing up in a suit. Like, there's. But then
It's
again, I'm sure those are
I hate to say this, but it's conformed to the uniform of the people you're going to see. So if you're going to meet a bunch of
yeah,
doctors, sort of dress like them. If you're going to meet a bunch of lawyers, dress like them. If you're going to meet a bunch of skateboarders, dress like them. If you're going to meet a bunch of surfers, sort of dress like you don't want to stand out unless you're trying to make a point about standing out. But if you're trying to,
yeah.
you don't want them to focus on how you look. Dress how you feel good, but also make sure that you're not vexing them just by the fact that you're wearing, a pink dress and you're going to see a bunch of macho right wing whatever.
Yeah, I mean, I guess again, I mean, to me, I like your point, which is like when we're recording this, I don't know when people listen to it, but 2024, early 2024, and I, I think there's a lot more conversation about doing what's right, as long as it's right for the whole community around you, And so if you're selling to skateboarders and you want to wear a suit, like go for it. You just accept that maybe you'll have a bit more of some hills to climb, but that's not a big deal. I think you're right. At the end of the day, we've been doing this for 3 years, and this is most probably one of the first shows dedicated to that. We've talked about standing up and stuff like that in the past, but I still believe that at the end of the day, the content and how you make that person feel, and the second part of what we're going to talk about, the conversation style, is way more important than the body language. That said, there are some studies, right, that came out, especially now since COVID, everybody's on Zoom, right? There's a little less, more and more now, but for a long time, there was like no in-person selling, right? Everybody was remote. And there are studies that came out that salespeople that turn off their camera don't have as much success as salespeople that do turn on their camera. At the end of the day, we are social beings, and speaking to a black screen, to a person that you don't know on top of it, right? It's not like it's not like a client that you speak to every second week and you're like, man, I'm really sick today, I'm going to keep my camera off to spare you that side. That's fine. But
Well,
like
in
to a
fact,
prospect that you,
let me interrupt you there. Doesn't that kind of prove that both body language and communication style make a difference if reps who turn off their camera don't have as much success than reps who do? Because if let's assume they're saying the same thing, the content's the same, the questions are the same, human beings, you just said it, I think need to feel they're
yeah,
communicating.
I think you're absolutely right. I think where I kind of uh, shy away from all these conversations are a bit that they, the way I've heard them, obviously this is not a scientific review of any literature out there, is that they tend to be very uh, didactic, right? It's like you need to wear a suit, you need to stand up, you need to do this, you need to do that, and it's like, man, like that's just not the world anymore, right? Like it's time to dust off your your theories and bring them into the modern world a bit. But you're right, we are social beings, right? And talking to, if I didn't want to talk to somebody, if your reps are not turning on their camera, then work on having be able to people buy on your website, right? Like, hey, I'm going to buy like, you know, sales process methodology with Paul. I don't need to talk to Paul. I'm just going to buy it on the website. Paul's going to show up at our first meeting, and that's it. Yes, people are human, and if speaking with sales is part of your sales process, then making sure that there is a human connection, that's key, right? That's why you're having your prospects speak to salespeople, is because you need a human connection. Otherwise,
Yeah,
just do it online, right? Like if it's a if you don't need to talk to somebody, then just do it online. Just call up
yeah,
the salesperson, save
yeah.
some salary.
No, and you're right. I totally agree with you there. And just to make one last point on, the visual effect. I mean, our we know this psychologically. Our eyes are take a huge amount of brain power. So if you're obviously getting some kind of visual stimulus from the person in front of you, and that visual stimulus is not just you staring at their lips. There's a lot going on, and you can actually tell a lot about how comfortable someone is with you on how they're responding to you and if they're actually responding to you. So I totally understand if I was buying something and the salesperson's got their camera off, I don't know. I can't tell if they're smiling when they're saying something, if they're saying a dry wit humor thing and they're trying to make me laugh. I don't know if are they being serious, or you can tell a lot in someone's face. So I can see how turning your camera off has a huge effect on that. So you're right that it's probably something that is harder to pin down and train someone on. You're right. You can't tell everyone stand up. You can't tell everyone wear a suit, but you can have a conversation with them to make them understand, to be sensitive to the fact that these things have an effect on the person in front of you, and
Yeah,
what is the image that you want to portray, and what is the situation you want to portray. I know for
yeah,
having being an old fart and having walked into a lot of sales meetings, I've seen so many people when I walk in who are very closed. I can tell they don't
yeah,
want to be in this conversation. So I naturally, right into the first part, I take a stance where I ask them questions and I'm trying to engage them into the conversation. But I don't just ask dry questions. I make sure I slow down my pace and I respect their feeling of, I don't want to talk to you right now. And then slowly I see them, like when you're kneading, whatever hard bread, that they're softening up, and then I can get into the conversation. But this is all a form of communication style, body language. I'm reading, naturally reading, as you do too. We're naturally reading what's going on. It's like when your kid comes home and you can tell they're in a grumpy mood. Or remember when you were a kid and you walked in, you were grumpy, and your mom would say, "What's wrong?" You'd say, "Wow, how does she know something's wrong?" Meanwhile, you probably walked in the house like this,
yeah, yeah.
and
Yeah,
and
you feel you're keeping it in, but you're not. Yeah,
yeah,
for sure.
exactly. So
Yeah,
go ahead.
and I think you're right. Like, I think that's why, like, to me, when I'm talking about communication style, there's like the two things that we mentioned, right? There's the body language, and I think in there it's within reason. It's focusing on what makes gives you confidence, right? I mean, um, despite what a lot of things we see out there, I think we're also more accepting that people are different, and some people speak with lisps, and some people speak a little faster, some people speak a little slower, and I think generally speaking, people are more accepting than they might have been a decade ago or so. And um, again, within reason, like, yes, work on your cadence and whatnot, but some people do speak fast, and I've worked with salespeople that speak fast, and they've had great success, because at the end of the day, what's not what's really mattering, it does matter, is what we talk about, and kind of the cornerstone of the show, which is asking the questions and making people feel important. And if you're asking the question quickly and you need to repeat all the time because you're speaking so fast and people don't understand you, that's fine, as long as you're still not fine. I get it. There's an impact. I understand that. But as long as you're asking those questions and you're giving people time to answer, and you're not, interrupting, and you're being active, and you're listening, and you're empathizing, and all the things like that, I think that's, the conversation style to me is more important at this
Yeah.
point in time, with a
Um,
few variations, right?
Well, I think one can't go without the other. It's sort of like, well, no one's going to listen to you if you walk in naked. You know what I'm saying? So if your conversation style is great, if you walk in a bathing suit or almost naked, it's like, that's too much. You're too off the norm, and I'm just not going to listen.
Obviously, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, obviously, always within reason, unless I guess you're selling bathing suits, then maybe that's another story. But maybe you're selling business bathing suits. They look professional, but you could just
I
jump
like
into
that.
the ocean
I'm
right
doing
after.
it for a new business, Fab. Business bathing suits.
Yeah, yeah, we'll open up in Australia, and it'll be perfect.
Now we should open up here in cold Quebec.
Yeah,
Business bathing suit. We'll have Wim Hof sponsor us, the guy who
yeah,
does cold treatments. Okay, so you want to let's talk about communication style. So one
yeah.
last thing I'd like to say about body language is there's a lot of information out there, and you're right. There's a lot of charlatans. There's a lot of bullshit. So if you're looking anything up, make sure that it's backed by some studies, and there's a lot of psychology studies on body language. I think it's definitely worth, if you're someone who's starting in sales, it's definitely worth looking at body language, how people react, whatnot. And there's some real studies out there. Go look at it. I'll give you one very quick study I looked at. It's a guy called George Kohlreiser who did this in the 70s. He did a study, and he said that if you want to have a fluid communication between people, if you want it to be conversational, you should try to limit to yourself to about 4 sentences. We're talking in the Western world, of course. I can't talk about other cultures, and that's very important too, because there's cultural differences, and you want to be
Right.
aware of that too. So when you're doing body language and whatnot, find out about cultural differences, and I think that makes a huge difference. So, but once that is said and you've done that research, you're right. Communication style, what we focused on a lot, is asking questions, whatnot, and that really falls into communication style. So you tell me a little bit what you mean by communication style, and then I'll jump in more in depth on my side.
Yeah. So to me, like, as opposed to the body language, which is at the end of the day more physical in my mind, how you're presenting yourself physically, the conversation style is more how you're conversing with the individual, right? So, we mentioned pace, right? If you're speaking fast, but I think that, to me, like, the things you really need to watch out for, to me, I was going to say something, but then it just flashed in my mind. I think what you need to be mindful for is honesty at the end of the day, right? Like, because we talk about don't interrupt people and be active in your listening and listen to what they're saying and stuff like that. But life happens, right? You said, like, you get excited about, they have an issue that you're like, ah, man, this is a perfect type of project that I would love to work on. And you get all excited. Just yesterday at the end of the day, I had a conversation with a prospect, and yeah, I interrupted them, right? Like, I was just excited about what they were saying, and I interrupted it, and I knew it. I heard it, and, but then, yeah, sorry, I just interrupted you. Sorry, I got excited, but, like, please carry on. Like, I think,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
you need to be, yes, mindful that you want to have, roughly 4 sentences, not more, when you're speaking, so that you can have an actual conversation, not interrupt people, slowing down your pace, listen to what they're actually saying, not just waiting for your turn to speak again. Like, these are all, like, cornerstones of having a healthy conversation. But don't be too harsh on yourself at the same time, right? Like, mistakes happen. You're huge,
To make
and
mistakes, exactly. You
and be
interrupted
human.
with a little mistake, but it's okay because you said, "Hey, sorry, I interrupted you. I'm just excited to say this," and they feel it too. It
Yeah.
depends. You're interrupting someone to be rude and cut them off. It's very different than if you're interrupting them to tell them you love what they're saying. Right? It's
Yeah, no, exactly. So I think, I think there's definitely some elements that you need to be wary of. But what I would argue, again, not scientifically, so I'm going against what you just said before about checking your sources, but um, is working on honesty. It's okay to screw up. And I remember, like, I don't know, it always kept with me this example that you gave. You were doing a cold call with somebody and you completely screwed it up, and you told the person, "Sorry, I just completely screwed that up. Can I start over again?" Right? You were honest, right? You could have been like, "Oh well, fuck it." Whoops. Uh, let's just hang up and move on to the next one. But you were honest about it, and I think people appreciate that more than you sitting there counting your sentences and in the end having an awkward conversation because you're counting your sentences, or being mindful like, oh man, I think I've been rambling.
Yeah.
What's that say?
Yeah, don't count in your sentences. I agree, but that's where, and that falls into, well, okay, let's finish this, but then quickly, I just want to make a little like sidebar here. That's why it's important. The role play is really important, not just because you're practicing your questions and your pitch and all the technical stuff, but also to get the kinks out of your communication style. If you are someone who tends to interrupt too much, or someone who's screwing up his intro, that's why your role play, your practice is really going to help you. It's going to help your style become part of you. Or if you want to change your style, because sometimes some people want to evolve in their style, it's going to help you get there. So just that little pause there. But if we come back into communication style, so what does it mean? It means, well, how you speak, your voice. Are you someone who pays attention? Are you someone who tends to talk more? Are you someone who tends to listen more? Are you someone who speaks too quickly? Now, there's one thing that I know, because it's just human nature. Most people, when they're selling, they talk a little too fast because they're experts in what they know, but sometimes they say it too quickly and they expect people to to uh, to grasp it quickly, and they also forget to put it into context of what's going on in that person's reality. And they have it all planned in their head, but they're not taking the time to see, is this human being listening to me? And one thing that I love to do, to tell anyone, when you're talking, like when you're having a conversation with a client, get a timer and time, let's say, you're having a conversation for 20 minutes with someone, and press the start stop timer on all the time that you spend speaking. And before you look at it at the end, try to guess how much time you spoke. 95% of the time you speak way more as a salesperson than you should be speaking. And that, just, this, and I know this, salespeople talk too much, and it's human nature. And there's too much talking. When we say they should be listening more, particularly at the beginning, most people forget that. So that's where I'm going to say to everyone in communication style, you probably need to listen more than you talk, because most people are talking too much. And I say this to myself, and I've been doing this for 30 years, and I still talk too much. Sorry, I said a lot of things in there. I did it. I flew
The
off
only
the
thing
handle.
I'll jump in and say quickly is don't use a timer. Use your conversational intelligence tool, which are very good at telling you how much you've spoken
No, no,
versus
but I'm saying just once. Do it
prospect
for
is.
fun. When you're talking to someone on the phone, just for fun, just do it once. Time yourself once.
I'm just saying there's tools in your CRM that allow you to do that more
Oh, okay,
efficiently
all
than
right, all right.
having a
What's
timer
the tool?
in
Bob,
you.
what's the tool, Cobb? You're right. What is it called? What's the tool?
Well, HubSpot has their conversational intelligence, but there's Gong, there's all the usual suspects out there that
Yeah.
will give you a percentage of how much time you've spoken versus how much the prospect has spoken. So that's all I
Okay.
was going to say.
Okay. All
It's
right. Use the tools. Don't be.
don't go buy out a timer.
Just prove myself as a dinosaur. There, you're allowed to laugh.
That's good. All good, Paul. I'm teasing you. Um, yeah, I mean, obviously, like there's different types of conversations, right? There's a conversation that you're having with your friends. There's a conversation that you're having with somebody that you just met, but in a friendly situation, right? Of a friend or something like that. And sales conversations, especially cold calls, are really not within the normal realm of conversation, right? You're, for all intent purposes, interrupting somebody. Even if you're having a call with an inbound prospect, right? Like you're still in, even though it's a welcome interruption, you're still interrupting their day. They're not used to speaking with you. It's not like a weekly meeting that they're having with you or anything. And so you have to accept that those conversations are awkward. right? To a certain extent, and some reps are more comfortable with them than others. And if you're in the other, which I very much put myself into, there are things that you need to be particularly mindful of. Um, Again, I can just speak from personal experience. What I find is like the most helpful it's ever been is just being honest, right? Like if you feel that it's awkward, it's probably that the prospect also feels that it's awkward, and you can call it out. And I find like the most success I've had is when I call it out, and I've say like I just I'm having a blank, like I don't know which question to ask you anymore, right? Like let's wrap it up, and I'll send you a few. I'll think it through and send you some questions by email, right? And it goes forward because you're making an awkward situation for both of you
You're,
more
yeah,
normal. You're normalizing the awkwardness,
yeah.
right?
Have you done that?
And
Sorry, I got to pause there. Have you actually done that? Have you said, I don't know what question to ask you. Can I send you an
yeah,
email? Yeah.
yeah.
And has it
I was like, I
worked?
need to think about this. I don't remember the exact words I said, but you've said a lot. You've given me a lot of information, and
I don't know what to do anymore.
I don't know where else to go.
Okay.
I know I have a lot, but I'm pretty sure I'm going to have more questions.
Okay.
Let me give me some time to think about it, and I'll send you questions by email if I have any. And they're like, sure, and it ended up going super well, right? Like
All right.
um, yeah, I think again we're in 2024 January when we're recording this. I think the world is in a Western world, at least North America, maybe just Canada, who knows, but in a place where people are more looking for honest interactions, and there is a distrust of salespeople, and if you can be not a salesperson, i.e., like the image that people have, the used car salesman that's trying to screw you out of whatever and just buy the shittiest
Go
car for
back
the
to you
most.
people because like they can't all be that dishonest. No, I'm just kidding.
No, exactly. Obviously, poor
Yeah.
used car salespeople, but we've all been through that, and they're it's a tough world to be in. I understand. I understand also part of their personality, having attempted to purchase a used car recently and not gone for it. I understand the world that they're living in, but I think
I know
people
what you're saying, though.
crave honest
So
conversations.
so what you're saying is be true to your real personality, be honest, be aware of what I would say. Yeah. So I think you're saying the same thing. Is tell me if I'm wrong. So be honest, be true to your personality. I won't do a conversation starter exactly the same way you do. If we script it, it might the words on paper might be similar, but our delivery will be very different because we're different people. And then also, if you're honest and you trip, it's a lot better than trying to cover it up or
Yeah,
bullshitting.
yeah.
Okay.
I remember once I sat when I first onboarded as a HubSpot partner. Um, I don't know if they still offer it, but they used to offer like sales training. Anyway, they offer it, but not in the same way anymore. But there, the sales training was run by two of HubSpot's most senior reps. Like they've been there almost since the beginning, right? So they've seen a lot. They've had a lot of sales conversation around selling HubSpot. So they were offering these sales training, and I'm paraphrasing, but one of the trainers told me like, "Oh, you kind of look like this cool nerd. Like, kind of go with it, right? Like, use that." I think people don't feel very threatened by you as a salesperson because of the. He didn't use the word posturing, but kind of what he was explaining was the posturing, and I didn't really buy it. Like I didn't see myself that way. But what I took away from it is like you have to be comfortable with who you are, and you are going to screw up, and you're going to have shitty calls, and you're going to have prospects or clients that are not playing ball for whatever reason, and the more you could be comfortable with the fact that this was not an ideal outcome, and ideally call it out, I think the more chances you have. Keeping in mind that you still need to ask the questions and understand the impact that they're trying to achieve, and if there's anything critical going on in the business, and I'm not saying like neglect all that and just have a nice conversation. There's things that you're trying to get to at the end of the day, um, but be open and honest with the conversation that you're having, right? Like,
Yeah,
shit, I just
absolutely.
interrupted you. I'm very sweary this morning, but shit, I just interrupted you. Sorry, like what were you saying? I got excited, or you just
Yeah,
reminded me of something, and I felt I had to say it, and then I think that goes a long way than just being like, crap, like screw this call, move on to
yeah,
the
yeah,
next
yeah.
one.
Well,
Yeah,
be honest, be true to yourself. But what I would say, you said that HubSpot sales training guy called you a cool nerd. By the way, which one did you have objection to, the cool or the nerd?
I just never thought of myself as cool or nerdy. So I was like, but he's like,
Like,
you have the drums in the background. Usually there's the guitar hanging there, but you have like the glasses and you have like the kind of preppy, although today the hair is a mess, but preppy hairdo, and just go with it, and like I said, I didn't necessarily associate with that description, or I don't see myself that way. But what I took away from that is like, be comfortable with who you are. Like it's. I think that goes a longer way. And so if you're somebody like we were saying at the beginning that loves wearing hoodies and flip flops, like do that again within reason. Except that some clients will maybe take objection to it, and that's okay. But
if
yeah,
your
I think that
substance,
goes.
I think you're right. If your substance is honest and real and valuable,
Yeah.
the package becomes less important. And I think the reason some people focus on the package a lot is because they have no substance. So you got nothing to say, you better look good. So what I would say to this, though, Fab, just to sort of wrap up the whole idea is be aware of your communication style, understand the communication style of the person you're trying to sell to or
Yeah.
to. Be aware of your body language. Be aware of some really strong body language cues, like if people are shutting down or disinterested or cutting you off a lot when you're trying to pitch to them. Um, you got to be aware of these things, and I think you need to. I think doing role plays is going to help you a lot in your delivery and your comfort level, and creating that honesty that needs to come out. For me, it's done a huge difference in my delivery style, and even just over 3 years, I think we've become better at it and more natural, and because we it's sort of a training, training by fire. We've been doing it for so many years. So I don't know, but to me, it's still very important. I know we don't treat this a
Yeah.
lot, but I think you have to be self-aware and be aware of the effect you have on other people. I would even say, if you're doing role plays, record it, look at what you do, look at what you say, react to yourself, because that's the best way to do it. Some people do a role play, they record it, and they go, "Oh my God, I hate myself." What do you mean? I talked too fast, interrupted you 1,000 times, I've got bad posture. Well, these are all things you can work on. You can talk
Yeah.
slower, you can interrupt less, and you can, stand up straight. You know what I mean? So,
Yeah.
that I think training is going to help you understand who the real you is and what you want to be and how you want to look and how you want to dress and what makes you comfortable and how you want to present yourself. That's all important, right? Because we are human beings.
Yeah.
We're
Yeah. I
smart monkeys.
agree with you. I think for me, the big takeaway is, be mindful that the way you are in front of the camera, even if it's as simple as like I turn around a lot because my notes are on this screen, but my camera's on this screen, like,
Tell the
be
person.
tell the person or ask them, is it okay that I take notes,
Yeah,
or can I record the call so I don't need to take notes? Like, again, when we were saying before, which is like honesty, right? If this, I like the way you put it, if the substance of what you're delivering is honest, that goes a long way. And but by being aware that communication styles and body language are do have an impact, be aware of them and address them when you feel something is off. You've interrupted somebody, or your camera's not working, so you can't have your camera on during the call, or address those things. People are a lot more forgiving than you hope.
yeah,
One part we didn't talk about, and that could be potentially a future show, is being, because you kind of mentioned it quickly there in your summary at the end, is being aware of your prospect or your customer's body language. I think that's probably much more, not much more. I don't want to denigrate what we just talked about, but that goes a very long way too, right? Like
yeah,
being aware of the crossing of the arms, the not turning on the camera, like what, there's certain, uh, everything that they do matters, right? Everything that they do, consciously or not, indicates something. And I think if you're aware of that, that goes a long way. And I think we should have a show about that.
yeah. Sure. And if I can just like tease the next show and give a little anecdote here, I've been recently talking to a lot of people, and I won't say who, but I was talking to some people who, at the beginning of our conversation, were very, very stiff and uncomfortable with what was about to happen. And you and I have talked about this a million times, and I consciously said, I'm going to ask, I hate to bring up the name of our podcast, but I'm going to ask the right question. And the right question was an open-ended question. Because when someone's uncomfortable, if I start doing yes and no questions, it's going to be even worse. So I asked a few questions, and the line of my questioning was based on how they were reacting. That's it.
Yeah.
I wasn't, I was taking my time to get to know them. And I have had to do this a lot because sometimes when I do reviews, I do assessment reviews, it can be quite uncomfortable for someone who's afraid that it's going to be, really nasty and mean. So they're often uncomfortable and people react differently. So I need to put them at ease. And the way I do that is ask them open-ended questions at first to find out what it is. So yes, I think it's a great, great topic for the next thing. And then I'm reading their body language. Like right now, I know you want to end the show.
Yeah. Because I keep looking at the time. I thought it would be a short show, that ended up being one of our
They
longer
never
ones.
are, Fab. They never are. Don't you know this after 3 years? What's wrong with you? Come on.
All right, Paul, this has been fun. Thank you for this. This is good.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye, everybody.
Sorry, my office neighbors are having a very loud conference, so I hope it wasn't too loud.
It's okay. They were clapping, so it seemed like you're adding like
I had a clap in the back.
Yeah, exactly. You have Ken clapping in the background. That's amazing. All right, bye, everybody.
Bye.